Now let's talk about an intermediate market structure called monopolistic competition. That sounds like one of those oxymorons like jumbo shrimp or military intelligence, but it's not quite that silly. In fact, it's not silly at all. All right, so how does monopolistic competition work? Well, the question here is what happens if you have both differentiated products and free entry? So what does that mean? Well, differentiated products, that's what we've been living with ever since we had downward sloping demand curves. So we have firms that have some distinctiveness to their products, and so they do face downward sloping firm demand curves. But we also have free entry, which is what we had in perfect competition. And that means that rivals or potential rivals are allowed to offer a product. They can just come in and produce a product that diverts some of our demand and therefore dissipates some of our profits. Just to make this all vivid and clear, let's just talk again about what these two ideas, differentiation and free entry, really mean. So differentiation, think about like Coke and Pepsi. What are these? These are both sort of dark-colored cola beverages, and we call them imperfect substitutes because they're substitutes, but not everybody agrees that they're the same. In fact, most people have a preference one over the other. It's similarly true that Crest and Colgate, two leading brands of toothpaste, are imperfect substitutes. They both do the job and have some flavor and whatever, but some people prefer one and some people prefer the other. The broad idea is that consumers are willing, to varying extents, to substitute among products in these categories. That's what differentiation means, and that's what that gives rise to some market power for each of these brands. But remember here, there's free entry, and so anybody can start a firm and launch a product, and that means that profits tend to be fleeting. So if we want to find really kind of good examples here, we want to think about contexts where entry is easy, where there aren't big costs of entering. In some ways, restaurants provide a very nice example of that. Each restaurant is a little bit distinctive, but it's not that hard to set up another one. And of course, since one kind of food is a substitute for another kind of food, not a perfect, of course, they are imperfect substitutes. All right, enough chit-chat. Let's get to the model. So what I have here, I want to make a distinction between the short run, SR, and the long run. This is a picture of the short run. The picture looks familiar because, well, frankly, it's the same picture that we've seen whenever we've written down a model with market power. So this is like the monopoly picture. But what are the features? Well, first, there's downward sloping demand, and of course, therefore, there's a marginal revenue curve that bisects demand. There is market power here. We see that, of course, this firm finds its optimal quantity at the intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost, and there's the optimal quantity, goes up to demand to find the optimal price, and there is a resulting markup of price over marginal cost. There's price, there's marginal cost at the optimal quantity, and there are profits. Okay, there are profits, and we see profits. I'm sorry, the markup goes all the way to here. Silly me. But there are profits as well. This is AC, and this rectangle is profits. Now the key thing about profits in worlds with free entry is that profits tend to attract entry. That's how it worked in perfect competition, and that's how it works in monopolistic competition as well. Now what does entry do? Well, entry is going to siphon some demand or divert some demand away from this firm, and it's going to cause this firm's demand curve to sort of shift, well, not sort of, but to shift left. Okay? So again, this is a picture of monopolistic competition, but in the short run. What does the long run look like? Well, as I said, profits attract the entry of rivals, and so the long run picture has demand, and there's sort of a funny feature here. So still it's true that there's demand and it's still downward sloping. There's the associated marginal revenue, there's the intersection with marginal cost, there's the optimal quantity, but now we go up to the optimal price, and what's different is that the optimal price, which is on the demand curve, is also on the average cost curve. That is, in this picture, there are literally zero profits because price equals average costs. So what used to be a rectangle of profit is now just a line, zero profit. Now, what's going on here? Well, in the end, meaning after entry of rivals has occurred, even though we still have some distinctiveness and market power, because there's a markup of price over marginal cost, we have zero profits. Now, how literally should I take this model? I guess the way I would suggest you think about it is as a cautionary tale. This is what would happen if you kind of let your brand get tired. What really happens is that most differentiated products firms continue to innovate. So they keep their demand curve kind of from falling back to ground. And think about the iPod. There's the original iPod, which at the time seemed about like the coolest thing in the world. Now it looks very terribly antiquated. There's been a succession of innovations from that firm that has, kept the excitement strong and the demand curve, from falling to the ground, as it were. And so, again, the picture of long-run equilibrium here with zero profits, I would think of mostly as a cautionary tale. So what are our takeaways on monopolistic competition? Well, first of all, think about the features here that got us to this model. And many industries have this. Many industries have both product differentiation and free entry. So in fact, it's a more important description of the world than it is a feature of the course, just because we've already dealt with these theoretical tools in a few different contexts. But a lot of industries do have these two features. Second point is that we want to make a distinction between the short run and the long run analysis. In the short run, the analysis looks just like any example with market power. We see markups and we see profits. But in the long run, as with any model with free entry, profits attract entry of firms offering imperfect substitutes, driving profits towards zero. But the last point, to forestall depression is just to realize that firms tend to innovate to forestall this zero profit fate.